Welcome back to Capital Tonight. The Public Policy Institute of New York State, an affiliate of the Business Council of New York State, along with the New York State Economic Development Council, recently released a report looking to find out what is fueling the malaise in the state's business climate and amid concerns over regulations and the cost of doing business. More than 40 associations and over 500 individual business leaders from across the state participated in this project. Now joining us here to talk about it are Ryan Silva, Executive Director of the New York State Economic Development Council, and Chelsea Lemon, Director of Government Affairs for the Business Council. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
So this report says only 8% of those who were surveyed feel that this state supports innovation. So what does that mean for New York's historic reputation as a center for business and commerce?
What it says to us is that there's opportunities in New York State for us to be more supportive of the business community. The feedback that we received over the 15 months of roundtable focus groups and surveys showed that we have a lot of work to do here in New York State to support innovation, to support small business, and create a better economic climate for businesses to operate in.
And as you're looking into that, how do you balance common sense regulations with those concerns about driving business away and eating into that reputation?
Well, so I think what we'd like to do is look at all of the regulations that are on the books in New York State, because when we were going around, everyone was saying, you know, it's really hard to keep up with the amount of regulations that are on the books. You know, New York is number 2 in terms of regulations nationwide, only behind California. And it's hard to keep up with what's on the books and what is coming. So let's take a look, let's utilize the resources we have. And so as the Business Council and as the New York State Economic Development Council, recommend is using Empire AI to look at the regulations we have on file and what is duplicative, what can we get rid of, how can we streamline things so that they're easier for business to comply with.
And part of this is that there's constantly things being added. I think the report says there are 24,000 bills between 2023 and 2024. So in terms of moving forward and adding to that, what do you need from state lawmakers?
We need an opportunity to sit down and speak with them directly about the challenges, the concerns, but frankly, the opportunity we have with supporting small business, all different industries across New York State. Just the sheer volume of regulation, over 300,000 regulations on the books, over 17 million words, is just overwhelming at times for small to medium-sized businesses that truly want to grow and expand here. So we're hopeful that this blueprint will provide a roadmap and recommendations that we can work with the legislature on, work with the governor's office, work with lawmakers to create a more active and robust environment for businesses to grow and expand here.
And part of those recommendations is having some sort of a regulatory body return to the executive branch. Why is that important?
I think that's important because there are so many different agencies trying to do so many different things, and more often than not with extremely well-intentioned ideas. What we're looking for and what we're hoping is that an individual or a czar, so to speak, that can take a look at all the different regulations across a variety of different industries and agencies to say, all right, does this complement or does this contradict some of the other things that we're talking about doing within some of the other state goals, whether it's around housing, whether it's around renewable energy, whether it's around attracting new manufacturing to New York State.
And I think it's important that we look at this in the terms of affordability, right? When the cost of doing business is high, that means that things for consumers are high. And so as the legislature and the governor focus on affordability, and all New Yorkers are impacted by it, how do we make things more affordable for business and in turn for everyone in the state?
And one thing that has attracted a lot of attention is the scaffold law, which was obviously developed many, many years ago at a time when industry was developing here. Why is that something that you chose to focus on?
Based on the feedback that we heard from over a dozen focus groups and specific industries that we had conversations with during this process, the scaffold law was one of the things that seemed to emerge most around increasing costs for new development. New York State is really the only state left that has a scaffold law on the books. It's well over 100 years old, so we think it's time to really take a look at the implications of a scaffold law and what it means to trying to achieve our housing goals, our construction goals, our renewable energy goals in New York State.
And it's hard, like Ryan said, to build with the scaffold law. It increases costs. just last year, the U.S. Chamber came out with a study about hidden tort costs and how those are built into the costs that consumers pay every day. They found that the nationwide standard was $4,000 that everyone paid, per household nationally. But in New York, it was $7,000. And so New York consumers are paying $3,000 more in tort costs, including costs built in with the scaffold law. And so we'd like to see that addressed.
And one of the things we heard from a lot of the small to medium size businesses is challenges around getting insurance to cover the scaffold law. So a lot of smaller companies that may be interested in bidding on projects or doing more work in New York State are oftentimes just not able to compete for those types of contracts and those kinds of jobs.
One more thing that I did want to hit on is it's pretty much impossible in New York to talk about affordability without talking about the state's energy policy. So talk a little bit about what you found there in these constant conversations about affordability.
I think what we found is that there's businesses who want to expand in New York State, but they're concerned about our energy capacity. Actually, I believe it was this week, Assemblyman Cunningham came out and said that he's for an all of the above approach, right? And that is something that the Business Council has always been behind. We're not against a transition to renewable energy, but we need to do it in a way that's responsible and that accounts for the things that we want to do in the future in terms of building, but also takes care of our constituents at home, making sure that they can keep the lights on.
Yeah, energy affordability, reliability, supply is one of the most critical economic development initiatives that we have here as a state. And at this time, it appears though we're not going to have the necessary energy for all of our ambitious economic development goals. So we think an all of the above approach, where we're starting to transition from some of the fossil fuel industries to renewable energies, the timing just needs to be adjusted so that we have a conversation around what it means for attracting the next generation of jobs here in New York State.
All right, we have been speaking with Ryan Silva, Executive Director of the New York State Economic Development Council, and Chelsea Lemon, Director of Government Affairs for the Business Council, about that recently released report. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us, Jack.
Thank you for watching our YouTube channel. Let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, and click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV to learn more about the candidates, where they stand on the issues, and more. We'll see you then.